Owl here, and today I am doing the makeup book tag. So I do not know who this tag was created by, but the questions that I found were on Sarah Without an H's channel. I don't even know like what exactly happened because I've been looking so much for videos of the original makeup book tag, but it seems to have just completely disappeared. But I will link Sarah's video down in the description for you guys to go check out, as that has all of the questions. And basically this is just you discussing your makeup routine or a kind of makeup routine that you want to do and answering some bookish related questions. Now typically I do my makeup in the style of basically doing it what coordinates with my outfits, so that's kind of what I did today. I did a little bit more of a dramatic blue and gray eye, or even it looks black in some areas, and then a nude lip. And I just really enjoyed doing it. It was really fun. So I hope you guys enjoy this tag, and I hope that you guys get inspired to do this yourself and maybe want to see me do more of these in the future. I thought it was really fun, so maybe I'll do them more. So please excuse the huge pimple that is in the middle of my forehead. This was popped a few days ago, and it was really gouged, so it's really disgusting looking, but it's just scabbing over basically, because now it's like a normal scab. So basically what I started off doing is I just washed and moisturized my face, but for some reason today my face is wanting to be a little more dry than it normally is, and I'm not sure as to why. It might be because we're having a lot of rain here and it's really humid. My skin tends to not do well with humidity. It likes to just be super dry, and then other times it's super oily. It's very combination skin if you have combination skin. Also, I look like a complete goofball with my hair pulled back like this, but you know, has to happen. So the first question is primer. Pick a book that left a lasting impression. So for my primer, I actually used two different products. If you guys watched my biannual Bibliothon reading vlog, I kind of went through some of my makeup stuff in that video because I was preparing to go to Warped Tour on Friday. So the things that I used first is kind of a more actual primer, and that is the e.l.f. Mineral Infused Facial Primer. This is just really nice and creamy to get my skin a little bit nice and soft. And then I also combine it with the Smashbox Photo Finish Primer Water. I've been using this stuff for a good long while. It's really awesome. It makes my skin feel super refreshed and clean, and it just kind of really helps to set a good base with my foundation and concealer and all that stuff. So the last book that I can think of that left a lasting impression on me actually was Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. I gave that book a 5 out of 5 stars, and I ended up reading it for the biannual Bibliothon, and I just fell in love with everything about it. I loved the atmosphere. I loved Audrey Rose as a main character. I loved Thomas Cresswell as a secondary character. I loved the atmosphere of the story. I just loved everything about it, and it was so well researched in my opinion. I felt like I actually understood what was going on, even if it was a fictionalized account of what might have happened if with the whole case of the Ripper murders. It's not exactly completely historically accurate in terms of what actually went on with the investigation of it, but you know, it had so many great historical elements to it. Like there actually were notes on, you know, the forensic science at the time and kind of what typically would be seen. Some of the actual victims in the story were victims that actually were killed by Jack the Ripper in 1888. So it had a lot of historical influence involved with it, but it was also fictionalized to make it about a young girl who is completely different for her time. So now after I put on the primer, I'm gonna use my spray and basically just spray my whole face to make sure it gets set in nicely. Then we just have to let it air dry so that it doesn't like smear anything, and it keeps my skin feeling nice and soft and supple. This actually, especially when my skin is feeling really dry, is really awesome with making my skin make it a little bit more lifelike basically, so that it's easier for my makeup to sit and it doesn't look as cakey. But it's gonna look really cakey where this thing is because this is like super dry and there's nothing I can do about it until the scab comes off. So I have an additional step to my beauty regimen. I always use my color correcting serum before my foundation, which the next question is foundation, so I'm going to put this on first. This is the NYX HD Studio Photogenic Studio Concealer in shade 12. Basically, this is just the green color correcting concealer to help with any redness. I typically get a lot of redness on both of my cheeks, a little bit on my nose, a little on my chin, and sometimes kind of around my eyebrows and my forehead, because I have rosacea, which is a skin condition where your skin has a lot more more red undertones, and especially when you're working out or you are physically exerted, your skin really turns red very easily and very quickly. So typically the green helps to counteract all of that redness so that it doesn't seem as prominent, and helps with also correcting any red spots from acne or anything, which thankfully my acne over the last several months has greatly diminished, other than this monstrosity up here. Which is really strange, because if you guys may have noticed, I had talked a lot during the semester especially about how my skin was being really awful to me. My skin typically breaks out more so on my cheeks than anywhere else because of my seasonal allergies. So when kind of the weather changes between like summer to fall, or fall to winter, or spring or winter to spring especially, basically anytime it changes from going from really cold to even colder or cold to warmer, my skin gets really freaked out, and it basically just, it's all kinds of problems, and it's not fun because half the time I can't get rid of them, but it's whatever. So I'm gonna quickly buff this in, and then I will continue with the next question for the tag. Also, one thing I've learned with anything with putting in foundation or concealer is when you go to blend it, always pat, don't rub it, because rubbing is actually going to take off more of the makeup than anything, and patting and dabbing is more so going to try to get it to sit in your skin better. That's something I've learned, and something I've learned from not only other beauty gurus, but, which I'm not even a beauty guru, I just do my makeup the way I want, and it usually looks good. But beauty gurus, they typically will tell you this, and I find that it actually works better, because I used to be one to just slobber everything all over my face and make it like super streaky and all this stuff. But I've just found that the patting and dabbing does much more wonders, and actually keeps my skin from drying out too badly, especially when my skin's already dry. It doesn't make my skin look cakey, it doesn't make it look like it's going to flake off or anything. It just seems to be better that way. So that's always kind of the thing I like to do, is just pat and dab instead of just rubbing and smearing everything. Okay, so now that I look as green as a lima bean with all this green concealer because my skin is being really awful today, I'm going to move on to foundation, which actually is my next step after I do my color correcting concealing. So the question is, pick your favorite first book in a series. So the foundation that I use is actually not the one I typically use. The one I did use was a Smashbox one, I believe, or no, it was a Makeup Forever foundation, but I ran out of it, and I don't remember the number formula that I had, and so I decided to try something a little different to see maybe if a drugstore brand would still work well. And the one that I've actually really been enjoying, I've used several times now, that seems to work really well, is the Maybelline New York Fit Me Foundation, the matte and poreless one for normal to oily skin, in shade 105 Fair Ivory, because most of you guys can tell I am very fair. I am very pale. I don't typically go out in the sun very much, and it's just not something I like doing. So when it comes to my favorite first book in a series, I think the last one that I really enjoyed, I mean, other than the Beautiful Creatures book, I'm gonna avoid that one just because I talk about that series all the freaking time, and it is one of my favorite series of all time. I love the first book more than anything, but the last first book that I really enjoyed, I think, again, it was also Stalking Jack the Ripper, but I think also one that was before that was Renegades by Marissa Meyer, because now most of us in the book community know that that is going to be a trilogy, and I just fell in love with the entire series idea, and I loved Nova as a main character. There were so many great characters within that book, that first book by itself, that really kind of made it so easy to understand how this story is going to go, and it seemed really cool. Nova is a very morally gray character, and you see not only her kind of morally grayness, but even another character who's supposed to be a good guy, and the book really for me was kind of just talking about, you shouldn't assume anyone is in any way good or bad, because there might be some things about individuals that you know, some might think are good, some might think are bad. I just really enjoyed it. I loved the feeling of the city that we were given because it wasn't a whole heck of a lot, but it was enough to where, you know, I felt confident that this was like a real place. Like it felt like a true place in the world that I wanted to go visit, and considering that it's a place with people with superpowers, that's a hard thing to do, is to make a city like that super believable. And I think that Marissa Meyer set herself up for a great series because there's so much that can happen, especially with how the ending of Renegades ended up, because it threw me for such a freaking loop that I almost chucked the 550 some page book across the room, which probably would have left a dent somewhere, and I'm very glad I didn't do that. But the fact that she was able to write such a captivating series to where I was able to have that kind of a reaction is really, really good and seems very promising for what is to be expected later on with Arch Nemesis, which comes out in November, I believe, of this year. And then the final third book in the series, which I do not know what it is called. I don't believe anybody does at this point. But it should be coming out hopefully maybe in 2019, maybe 2020. I would hope sooner, but you know, it takes time to write books. I totally get it. I've been working on my own novel now for like 3.5 years and it's still not even half done. All right, I think that's pretty blended. This foundation does really well with covering up the green concealer that I have. It also does really well with covering up a lot of the darkness that I have from acne scarring. I really, really like this, and it held up during Warped Tour. I was surprised because actually during Warped Tour it rained for a good part of the day and my foundation actually didn't move over the course of the entirety of the day. It doesn't make my skin feel super greasy, it doesn't make it feel super oily, which is also really good because I found that a lot of other foundations after a long time make my skin get really oily again, even though, like, because I have combination skin, but it really messes with my T-zone a lot of times, other foundations, but this one has actually proven to be a lot better than most other foundations. So next is concealer, and I also am using another NYX concealer. This one is also the HG Studio Photogenic Studio one in shade 2, because again, I'm very fair. And the question is, pick a character you wish you could get rid of. Oh goodness. See, I can't really pick off the top of my head because I tend to not dislike characters very much. I think there's some that I definitely don't like for specific reasons, but I wouldn't get rid of them per se because I still think that they're important to the story. I think the closest thing I could think of actually would be Detonator from Renegades, because I just despised her so much in that story. As much of a great character as she was for the plot, she just ruined everything for this story, and I just, not ruined as in bad, but ruined like the plans that other characters had, which made me really angry. So I wouldn't necessarily get rid of her, but she definitely is not one of my favorites for sure. So with my concealer, what I typically tend to do is do the same with my green concealer, where I will try to cover up any pimples and stuff that I have. So like this thing up here, I will try to cover it up as much as I can. But the majority of the time, I will use it for under my eyes because I have a little bit of darkness under my eyes. Thankfully not too bad. I have fairly decent genes to where my eyes don't have super dark circles or bags. But most of the time, I don't sleep very well at night, so they do seem darker some days. So I basically work under them, and then I also hit up my cheeks to make up for any pimples that might be coming through or dark spots. And then I do a little on my chin, on my nose, and up on my forehead for a little bit of highlighting. Not too bad though, like I don't do a whole lot because sometimes it can look really cakey on my skin. But those are kind of like the main things that I do with my concealer. Is for powder, but I actually don't use facial powder because my skin, like I said, it can get very dry most of the time and actually makes my face look a lot cakier. That was something that I learned in high school because I used to do foundation, liquid, and powder one after the other before I had learned about concealer. and just the powder made my skin so dry, and actually made things worse for my skin, I think. I think it actually made it harder for my skin to breathe during the day in high school, which is probably why I had so many breakouts when I was in high school as well, because my skin just couldn't breathe with all that powder. So I typically don't use powder, at least powder foundation. I don't use a setting powder because thankfully my concealer doesn't crease at all when I use it. It doesn't crease during the day, or at least I don't notice it, so I don't really use it. But the question for powder is, pick your favorite last book in a series. So the last book that I really love in the series was actually the last book in the Morganville Vampire series by Rachel Kane. I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me right now, though, because it's been, for one, a really long time since I've read it, and two, there are so many books in that series that I cannot remember all of the names of them. I can remember like the first 2 books' names, but this last one was really great because it basically just ended on such a great note. Things were happy, things were good, but you still understood that there were still problems that needed to be solved, but you wouldn't be able to see them because it wouldn't have made for like a really good like next book. And you kind of realized that the series had run its course at this point and was supposed to end on a much more happy and hopeful ending, which, considering everything that had happened leading up to that point, like, you were really happy with it. I just really loved it because it was a very bittersweet ending for me, because it was one of my favorite series growing up, and I just had loved the series through the entire story of it. And then when it got to the last book, I was both really happy for what had happened at the very end of the book concerning a romantic relationship between 2 characters, and I was just really sad at the same time, though, because it was over. But I realized that the story had run its course, but this last book had wrapped things up so nicely for me that it was super satisfying at the time. Next is eyebrows. Now, I actually don't do my eyebrows very often. I used to fill them in a lot, but honestly, you guys can tell my eyebrows are very dark and they don't really have many sparse moments. The worst is actually like probably right here on the edge of my eyebrow by like where my nose is. But the problem is when I fill it in here, it looks so uneven with my other eyebrow. Like, it basically looks like there's enough of a gap to where if I fill it in, it obviously looks filled in, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I don't touch my eyebrows. I don't even touch them with a spoolie brush. I just leave them as is because I like my eyebrows how they are. They're good. They do what they need to do. But the question is, a book that you think everyone should read. I personally think everyone needs to read The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. It is one of my most favorite contemporaries of all time, and it is so important to read something like this because of the message that it gives about the idea of police brutality and how it is perpetuated in the media, and how people just need to just be more aware of the problems that are within our society. I think this was one of the books that really set the bar for talking about things in society that nobody talks about. No one likes to talk about systemic racism. No one likes to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality, and this book makes it a point to where this is needed and this needs to be discussed. And right now, especially in our time, it's important that we realize that everyone's lives are important. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, Mexican. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, Catholic, anything. It doesn't matter. Everyone's lives should be able to be recognized and valued, but because of the way that especially the United States is set up, we still are systemically racist to where people of color and those of different religions other than Christianity are completely blocked against. And this book really opened my eyes to it, and I think that those of us who may not quite understand what's going on with the world, if they read this might give them a really good opportunity to understand how awful things are and how really messed up some things are in terms of police brutality, that it will make them understand that there needs to be a change in society for things to get better. So I'm gonna add an extra step for myself because I like to do my eyes after I finish up everything with my face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my contouring and just do that super quickly. I don't like to do a whole heck of a lot because I'm not super good with it, but I do enough to make sure that my cheeks are a little bit more hollowed out. But what I use is just this Profusion Studio Contour Palette. I got it at like Five Below for $5, and it's actually pretty decent. It's like not super pigmented, but again, I don't like to be heavy-handed with it, so I try to use as little as possible with it. But I basically go in the hollows of my cheeks, under my chin, and around my forehead. I don't really do my nose much because my nose is very slender and I don't really feel like I need the contouring there, but I will just get started and stop talking. This really just helps with giving me a little bit more color on my face, because especially after I've added my concealer and foundation, my skin sometimes can look very, very pale still. So this helps with just giving me some more color and kind of just carving out my face a little bit so that it looks a little bit more lifelike and less like a ghost. And as you can see, I don't use a whole heck of a lot. I use very minimal and I try to blend it out as best as I can, but this is something that I'm not super talented at. There are people who do contour super, super well. I am not one of them, but more often than not, it tends to look out at least decent, so that's always a good thing, I guess. Now, I'm not going to really answer a question for this one because there is no real question for something like contouring. There is one for blush, but I'll answer that one later, even though I like to finish off my face with doing my blush. To move on to eyeshadow, which the question for that is pick a book that has your favorite colors on the cover. Goodness gracious, that's really difficult. But first, what I would like to do is just let you guys know kind of how I do my eyeshadow. So typically, I will coordinate my eyeshadow and lip color with whatever it is that I'm wearing. It's something I've done since high school, and I just really like that. I feel like it makes the most sense for me. I like to be very color coordinated. So what I'm going to use is this Black Heart Troublemaker eyeshadow palette from Hot Topic. It's very pigmented. The colors really work out and stand out very well, but there is sometimes fallout, but I've actually been able to not have that happen. But I know that some people can say that these kinds of palettes that are from, like, you know, stores like Hot Topic are going to be really cheap and not used well, but I like it. I feel like it works well for me. So the colors I'm going to use, this has a lot of different fun colors because it's a goth palette basically, but what I'm going to use is this dark blue color here called VIP. I'm basically going to use that on my lid. I'm going to use my base of Anti, just so that I have a little bit of a whiter base to help with keeping everything even. And then in the crease, I am going to use this color called Alt, because it's kind of like a blue, dark gray color that seems to work really well with this dark blue and make it nice and seamless. So what I'm going to do is first use this flat brush to work with Anti, or Anti, however you want to say it, and just dip it in and get a nice good coating on it, and then apply it all over my lid and crease up to my eyebrows. So typically I don't really look at colors of covers. I really just look more so for the composition. But I will say that one cover that I really, really love that incorporates my favorite colors is the original cover for the hardcover of Flame in the Mist by Renee Ahdieh. I love all of the colors of purple and orange involved with it, and it is just super pretty. I really also love the ninja stars that are at the bottom of the cover, which kind of relates to one of the things that is developed in that story, which is the development of ninja stars. This color does not really show up very well. It's actually much more sheer than you would think with it being so white in the pan, but it actually works as a really good base. It kind of just makes everything nice and even toned, and it doesn't show up as super bright, so it's not super distracting from the other colors that I like to use. This is my favorite base to use within this palette just because it makes things really nice and even, like I said, and it's not super showy. So then I'm going to use this smaller, flatter brush to work in the color VIP, which is the blue color. So my favorite color is purple, actually, and I can't think of another cover off the top of my head that incorporates purple, but that's the one color that I really, really like. I feel like it stands out also a lot on covers because it's a color that most covers don't use or publishing companies don't use for colors, and I just really enjoy it. I also think that the paperback version of Flame in the Mist that incorporates purple is really, really pretty. It's very sharp. I also really love the image of the girl that is supposed to be Mariko in the background. I think it's very, very sharp. And I also really, really like the cover for the second book, Smoke in the Sun, which is kind of more, it's got a blue base to it. It also has Mariko in the background. I don't know, just for some reason those covers really, really speak out to me. and I think that they are just absolutely beautiful and both incorporate some of my favorite colors because I also really like the color blue a lot. So VIP basically is just going to sit on my eyelids. It's a little more heavy-handed, but that's because I'm going to be smoking it out a little bit before I put in Alt in my crease so that it doesn't seem as smudgy and kind of looks a little bit more seamless. Again, I'm not like a beauty guru. I am nowhere near capable of being an MUA in any way. So now I'm just going to take my big fluffy brush that I have and just kind of smoke out the outside of the VIP color to kind of make it a little bit more seamless and a little bit more just nicer and give it some softer edges so that it's not super harsh and doesn't look like I just have big raccoon eyes. Okay, that's a lot better. So now it's a lot more smoky, it's a little bit nicer. So I'm just going to quickly rub that off a little bit. Then I'm gonna go into Alt and put that into my crease. Now this is very, very dark, so I'm also going to take some of it and work it into my lid so that it's not a super harsh line between the blue and the dark gray. But this color works really well, I found with the blue, because it's got kind of a blue base to it, at least how it looks in the palette. So it works with this color very well and kind of actually makes it really, really a seamless kind of transition from the blue to a darker color. Next is eyeliner, which is pick a dark and mysterious book. The last dark and mysterious book I read, other than Stalking Jack the Ripper, was probably the closest thing I can think of was The Wicked Deep, which was the group book for the biannual Bibliothon. The book itself wasn't super dark, but it definitely was mysterious. It had a very kind of supernatural vibe to it, as it dealt with basically this town in Oregon called Sparrow, where all of these people were kind of preparing for this festival where every year these three sisters who were drowned during the Salem witch trials come back and they take over the bodies of three young women in the town and lure men to the harbor and drown them. This happens every year during this festival, and a lot of the time there's a lot of tourists that come around, so it's a big deal, and people have been come around from the entire country to see it, and it's a huge thing. The town itself was very mysterious sounding, and it was very much a combination of like practical magic and hocus pocus, but I think that it could have been a little bit more creepy. It didn't feel as creepy as I think it should have been, but it definitely still had a lot of mystery involved with it. So to do my waterline and my tight lining on my eyes before I do my liquid eyeliner, I use the NYX Professional Makeup Retractable Eyeliner in black. I love using black eyeliner. I very rarely will use anything else because I feel like black just looks really good against my dark eyes. I don't know why. Something I've always done since I was like 13, and so I've just never changed it. It's something that's worked for me. Then the liquid eyeliner I don't typically use but have been using recently that's worked is the Essence Super Last Eyeliner in deep black. This is a 18-hour liquid eyeliner, so it's waterproof, I'm pretty sure, and sweatproof. It lasted pretty much the entirety of Warped Tour for me, so I was really, really happy. It's got kind of like this spongy tip to it, so it's a little bit easier to deal with than a brush, which I really like, and I typically like to just do a wing on both sides, but very rarely do they come out even, so we'll see if this ends up coming out in any way even. Actually came out fairly even, which I'm surprised. Last couple of times I've done them, they've come out even, but any other time when I'm not filming, they never come out even. So you guys are just my good luck charm. Next is mascara. Pick a long book. So the mascara that I use is the NYX La Mahou Individual and Curl Mascara in black. Black works with me. I have dark lashes, dark eyeliner, dark mascara, just it all works. So the last long book that I tried was a failure. I DNF'd it, and that was Insomnia by Stephen King. That was a 787-page book, and it was the most boring book I think I have read in a very, very long time. I don't know even what was supposed to be going on. It was about this guy that basically after his wife dies of cancer, he develops insomnia, which is, you know, in the title, but he also develops some strange abilities because of his insomnia, and there's this other person in town that's able to do it, and he has no idea why, and he's trying to find out why, but there's other things that are going on, like dealing with this guy trying to, like, destroy this women's clinic that he has a thing against because they do abortions. It was all kinds of crazy and confusing, and I do not really even understand what happened in that book. So about 400 or so pages into it, I just DNF'd it because I had lost all interest. I had no idea what was happening, and I couldn't do it. Next is Blush, which is a question saying, pick a book that had some cringe-worthy romance. Oh boy. Oh boy, I just finished a book yesterday that had some very cringe-worthy romances in it, and I can't wait to talk about it. But the blush that I'm going to be using is one from Tarte. This is called Party. And this one was actually one I got for free for my birthday when I turned 20 last year. So I don't know, it works well. It's actually a really great color for my skin. It's not super red or pink. So the last book that I read that had some very cringe-worthy romance was actually the book I just finished yesterday, like I said, and that was Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Amber Shares. There were so many romances in that story that I was so not happy with, and they were very cringy. One involved one of the characters basically falling for a boy who was 19 while she was 15, and it was one of the assistant soccer coaches that she knew, and I just could not stand her even falling for this kid because I don't know, I feel like the book itself is very dated in its 2000s contemporariness. It's definitely one that does not age well, so it was just a cringe fest the entire time, besides just the romances that were involved with it. Next is Highlighter, which is pick a book that brightened your day. So for my highlighter, I have this Color Story Unicorn Vibes highlighter collection. Again, another thing I got from Five Below because they just have a lot of really good makeup on sale. It's nothing that is really bad, actually. I think it's probably some of the best makeup I've found. The color that I'm actually going to use is this purple one. I've never used it before, but I feel like it's going to work with this color palette I've got going on, so we are going to try it. So the last book that brightened my day, I think, had to have been Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, despite the fact that it's actually kind of dark in some places. But that is because I just really, really enjoyed the story a lot. I had expected it to be really, really good, but not as good as it was. Like, I just really enjoyed it for some reason. I don't know why, but it just turned out to be really, really good. I just ended up loving it, and I think everyone needs to read it. It's a really good high fantasy, and I'm excited to be able to read the other books in the series to be able to read more about it. And finally, the last step is lipstick, which is your favorite book kiss. For my lipstick, I am going to be using a more nude color considering I have very dark eyes going on. So I'm going to be using the Maybelline Superstay Matte Ink Lipstick in the shade 60, which is called Poet. I think my favorite book kiss had to have been between Elias and Laya in the first book of Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I just thought it was super cute and very romantic, and also like they realized that it was something that was not normal considering the relationship between the two of them, which I really appreciated. Between the two of them was just really sweet and heartwarming to read, and I just thought that it was a really good scene for this kiss that was involved. Very last step is obviously setting spray to keep everything in place, and the one that I use is just the e.l.f. Makeup Mist and Set. Just somehow keeps everything together, and I don't know how, but it does. And there you guys have it. That is the full face and the makeup book tag. and I really enjoy doing this tag. I really don't do my makeup often a lot on camera, and I haven't been really wearing a lot of it recently because of my skin clearing up a lot and just not really having any reason to do my makeup. So I'm proud of how it turned out. I think it ended up turning out better once I put the eyeliner and mascara on, especially with the eyeshadow, because it started to look kind of crappy, and it actually looks worse on camera than I think it does in the real life. So if you guys did enjoy this makeup tag, please do give it a big thumbs up and let me know if you would like to see more stuff like this. I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I could try to do makeup inspired things. I see a lot of people on BookTube doing makeup inspired looks based on covers of books and characters and all kinds of stuff like that. Typically, like I said, my makeup is surrounded around what I'm wearing. So because I'm wearing this blue shirt and a pair of blue capri pants, blue was the kind of color I wanted to work with today. So that's typically what I do, but I'd be willing to branch out and do different stuff if you guys would like to see it. But let me know down in the comments below, and if you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!